Hello everyone. For nearly half a century, Kurt Russell and Kevin Costner have existed as two of the most defining pillars of American cinema, two men whose rugged charisma, quiet intensity, and unshakable screen presence shaped entire generations of moviegoers. But what fans never understood until now, and what Kurt Russell finally broke his silence about after years of speculation, is the complicated, intertwined, and deeply human story of respect, rivalry, admiration, frustration, and unspoken connection between them, a story hidden beneath decades of Hollywood gossip, studio politics, and media-driven narratives that painted them as competitors, when, in truth, their journeys were far more parallel and emotionally charged than anyone ever realized. Because while the world saw Russell as the charming tough guy molded by John Carpenter classics like Escape from New York and The Thing, and Costner as the stoic everyman reshaping cinema with Dances with Wolves, Field of Dreams, and The Bodyguard, both men were privately fighting battles with expectations, typecasting, aging, and the pressure to sustain mythic images that Hollywood was obsessed with preserving, even as they struggled to grow beyond them. And when Russell finally decided to speak openly about Costner, he revealed that their story truly began in the early 1990s, when the studios were aggressively pushing both actors into westerns, frontier epics, and historical dramas, creating an environment where each man became the measuring stick for the other, culminating in the legendary clash of Tombstone versus Wyatt Earp, two films about the same historical figure released within months of each other, sparking a media frenzy that had journalists, critics, and fans framing the two actors as enemies locked in a cinematic showdown. But Russell admitted that while the rivalry was real, in the sense that both films were competing for audiences, it was the studios, not the actors, who fueled the tension, feeding stories to the press, pushing narratives, and creating the illusion that if one film succeeded, the other man would fall, a manufactured battle that neither Russell nor Costner wanted, but both were powerless to stop. And yet Russell confessed that despite the forced rivalry, he couldn't help but watch Costner with a kind of reluctant admiration. He saw a man who was willing to take enormous risks, who directed ambitious multi-hour epics, who refused to settle for half measures, and who was repeatedly mocked or doubted only to rise again, reinvent himself, and reshape Hollywood's understanding of what a leading man could be, an evolution that Russell says pushed him to question his own career choices and seek deeper, more emotionally complex roles beyond the action characters that had defined him. And then came one of Russell's most shocking revelations. He and Costner actually spoke privately during the height of the tension, sharing concerns about studio interference, pressure from marketing teams, and the fear that the media's portrayal of them as rivals would overshadow the artistry of their work. And Russell admitted that he was surprised to find Costner not arrogant, not competitive, but thoughtful, introspective, and painfully aware of the burden of carrying a film on his shoulders, something Russell himself understood all too well. And as Russell continued breaking his silence, he described how he watched Costner navigate rising fame, brutal backlash, personal struggles, and eventual resurgence with Yellowstone, confessing that he admired Costner's ability to withstand failure without surrendering to it, to endure public criticism without losing his sense of purpose, and to step into a new era of his career with the same unwavering intensity he brought to his early roles. And Russell admitted that watching Costner defy Hollywood's tendency to discard actors past a certain age gave him a renewed sense of artistic purpose, inspiring him to challenge the expectations placed upon him and reminding him that longevity in this industry isn't about remaining youthful, it's about remaining authentic. But the most emotional part of Russell's confession came when he revealed that he often felt overshadowed by Costner, not in a jealous or resentful way, but in the sense that Costner's willingness to publicly take creative risks, whether directing sweeping epics or starring in unconventional passion projects, made Russell question whether he had played his own career too safe. And Russell acknowledged that while he built a legacy on solid performances and beloved roles, Costner took leaps that changed the course of cinema, and that kind of courage is something he has grown to respect deeply. And then came the twist fans never saw coming. One of his greatest most regrets was that he and Costner never made a film together, revealing that they came close several times. Scripts were floated, meetings were held, producers were enthusiastic, but Hollywood politics, timing, and branding concerns always got in the way. A tragedy, Russell says, robbed audiences of what could have been one of the greatest on-screen pairings of the modern era. Two titans of Western storytelling sharing the screen in a way that would have felt like the culmination of decades of cinematic legacy. And Russell concluded his confession with a level of emotional honesty few expected, saying that breaking his silence wasn't about settling scores or correcting history, but about acknowledging that Kevin Costner had, in ways both obvious and unseen, shaped his own journey, pushing him, challenging him, inspiring him, and standing as a quiet mirror reflecting the highs and lows of a career built on resilience, dedication, and the unspoken bond between two men who survived and thrived through the constantly shifting landscape of Hollywood. And by the time Russell finished, it became clear to fans that this wasn't a feud story at all, but a story of two icons who grew in the same soil, fought parallel battles, carried similar burdens, and ultimately earned each other's respect not through rivalry, but through the unbreakable truth that great actors recognize greatness even when it stands across from them, making Kurt Russell's long-awaited confession not just shocking, but deeply human, unexpectedly moving, and a powerful reminder of the legacy shared by two of the most influential stars of their generation. Thanks for watching.